I sat in the third row just far enough from the front to stay unnoticed, but close enough to track every glance, every whisper. The quarterly all-hands meeting at Solvanti's was a production stage lights glass pitchers of lemon water, printed agendas, with the company logo embossed in silver. And of course, Carson Vale at the mic, my manager, the head of strategy, the man who'd been building his career on the scaffolding of my silence. "Everyone here has delivered value this quarter," Carson announced, voice smooth as ever, fingers lightly drumming the podium. Except for strategy. Apparently silence isn't gold. The room cracked with laughter, some genuine, others forced and nervous. I saw a few eyes dart my way, then flicker away just as fast. It wasn't the first time Carson made a joke at my expense, but it was the first time he did it in front of 40 people, knowing full well I was right there. He didn't even look at me, just smiled like a man who'd already counted his bonus. I didn't smile back. Instead, I reached into my tote bag and removed a navy blue envelope. It was thick sealed and marked in black ink. For Olivia Strathmore. Immediate review. No one noticed at first, not until I rose from my chair, stepped past 2 rows of stunned faces, and laid the envelope on the conference table. I didn't say a word, just placed it there like a pin pulled from a grenade and turned toward the exit. The laughter stopped. Chairs squeaked. I could feel every eye in the room trailing me as I walked out, slowly, deliberately, heels, echoing down the hallway like punctuation. I didn't look back. Down the corridor, the air felt different, lighter, like I'd stepped out of a lie and back into something real. I passed the etched glass walls of HR, the lounge with its untouched croissants, the marketing wing full of grinning overachievers. I didn't pause. I didn't need to. Outside, the Texas sun was hot on my face as I crossed the plaza toward the parking structure. I was halfway to my car when I heard the sound behind me. Heels striking tile quickened breath. "Leora," a voice called. I didn't stop until I recognized it. I joined Solvantis through a Veterans Fellowship program they marketed as Vets to Tech, designed to give former military personnel a shot at integrating into corporate innovation. On paper, it looked like a progressive initiative. In reality, it placed people like me, quiet trained, to observe in the back rooms where no one had to deal with us. They didn't know what to do with someone whose last job involved identifying security threats across foreign networks or building predictive models to prevent ambushes. I wasn't flashy. I didn't network. I didn't post on Slack threads about lunchtime yoga or participate in morale-building trivia nights. What I did do was listen, watch, compile. Map patterns that no one else noticed. They called me the quiet one in strategy. I let them. Carson Vale took a liking to me early on. He liked that I finished assignments ahead of deadline, that I summarized complex patterns in 5 bullet points, that I didn't compete for airtime during meetings. Visibility is performance, he'd say, with a grin leaning against my desk. Keep feeding me and your day will come. My day never came. Instead, Carson presented my quarterly growth frameworks as his. My regional analysis of competitor loss trends became the core of his adaptive forecast model, which got him shortlisted for an industry award. Even my linguistic tone map, something I built on a whim to track customer retention based on sentiment cues, was dressed up and delivered to the executive team under his name. I knew it was happening. I tracked it quietly even then. I didn't speak up, not out of fear, but because I was still calculating, still trying to understand how deeply this company rewarded surface over substance, how far performance theater could take someone like Carson, and how far silence could take someone like me. The worst part wasn't that he stole my work. It was that I let him, again and again, documenting it like an intelligence operation I hadn't decided to act on yet. Not until I had every piece in place. And the Oslo memo, that was the final piece. 2 months ago, buried in the metadata of an obscure RFP from a mid-tier logistics firm, I found a name that didn't belong. Sevra Group, a European consortium known for hostile client acquisitions masked as transitions. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but I'd seen this pattern before overseas. I knew what to look for. Over the next week, I followed breadcrumbs across proposal databases, procurement notes, and procurement back-end APIs. A slow, deliberate infiltration. Sevra Group was targeting 3 of Solvantis' legacy clients, Brithmore Energy Halix Pharmaceuticals and Orion Trust, each worth more than 30% of our Q2 projections. I didn't panic. I built. What emerged was a 42-slide brief I called the Oslo Memo, named for the location of Sevra Group's holding company. The memo included traceable vendor movement affiliate, shell firm registrations, and a timeline showing we had at most 6 weeks before decision-makers signed away. I sent it to Carson under a subject line he couldn't miss: urgent potential client poach. Immediate action required, no reply. No meeting, no follow-up. 2 days later, I found the printed copy torn in half in the recycling bin near Carson's office. That night I stayed late and initiated what I'd avoided for years, my own off-grid archive. A separate log air-gapped, encrypted tracking every warning I'd issued, every presentation Carson repackaged as his every email where I was excluded but mentioned in the body as our analyst. I began recording my team huddles on audio-saving client call summaries with timestamps and printing email threads showing my original ideas before they were rebranded. I wasn't sure what I was building, only that it needed to be built. Every ignored flag became a tile in a mosaic of calculated negligence. I never said a word. That was the part no one understood. When people like Carson ignore your voice long enough, they assume you have nothing to say. But the truth was, I'd been preparing to speak, just not to him. And the moment I realized what else had been happening behind those closed doors, I knew silence had done its job. For 6 months, I let the silence work in my favor. Every time a client sent an email thanking me for personally salvaging the Q4 rollout, I archived it. When internal teams forwarded praise to Carson with a breezy passing this along, your analyst crushed it. I saved the thread. When I saw my own strategic drafts reshaped in Carson's presentation deck, bullet points intact, even my phrasing untouched, I printed the originals, dated and initialed. I wasn't collecting proof out of bitterness. I was collecting because someday I might need the truth to speak louder than his voice. I stored everything on an encrypted external drive hidden in plain sight, labeled Technical Docs Q3. I uploaded backups to a secure cloud node under a burner alias. I created a private client feedback log and color-coded it by tone green for gratitude, yellow for tension, red for patterns of distrust. And then I waited. The insult in the quarterly meeting wasn't unexpected. Carson had been fraying. A few deals were slipping. I'd heard him snapping at assistants walking out of check-ins, blaming data inconsistencies that didn't exist. I suspected he knew on some level that the scaffolding was starting to crack. He needed a distraction, a target. He picked me. So when the laughter died down and the projector lit up the next slide, I reached into my bag and retrieved the envelope. Inside was a dossier, not emotional, not accusatory, just a collection of facts that pointed toward a question the board had never thought to ask. Who was actually doing the work? I walked out without hesitation. My phone was in airplane mode. I left my company laptop on my desk. I didn't need anything from that building, not anymore. The folder would find its way to Olivia. That much I had calculated. What I didn't expect was how fast she would move once it landed in her hands. I was almost at the garage when I heard the sharp staccato of heels behind me. I didn't stop, not until I heard her voice. Leora. I turned. Olivia Strathmore, CEO of Solvantis, was clutching the navy envelope, her breath tight from running. Her blazer hung unevenly over one shoulder, and for the first time since my interview 3 years ago, she looked human. "You can't just leave like this," she said. "I already have." She stared at me, her chest rising, then quieter. "Did Carson know you authored the Oslo memo that froze me?" "No," I said, my voice steady. "He claimed it was his." Her fingers tightened around the envelope. She looked away just for a second, then back at me. Come back inside. Just you and me. I didn't move right away. The heat of the pavement rose through my shoes. My instinct said to walk, let them burn in what I'd left behind. But instinct is reactive. Strategy waits. I followed her back across the plaza. We entered through a side door, avoiding the main lobby. No one saw us. She didn't speak as we rode the elevator to the 18th floor. Her office was quiet, too quiet for mid-morning. She closed the blinds halfway before locking the door behind us. I read it, she said, placing the folder on the glass coffee table. Not all of it yet, but enough to know we have a situation. You control a level of client intelligence that Carson never even saw. He didn't ask. No, she said softly. I don't think he wanted to know. She paced once, then stopped. Give me 1 hour and a whiteboard. Show me what you see. I took off my blazer, rolled up my sleeves, and picked up a marker. Clear the wall, I said. I'll show you exactly where the cracks begin. The first line I drew was a date August 3rd. It marked the first internal warning I'd submitted about a data discrepancy in the Hallex account, one that went unanswered. Then I marked the next August 17th. A follow-up. Ignored. I kept going. 18 warnings, all documented, all disregarded. I drew arrows connecting each to the fallout that followed. Client confusion, delayed delivery, eroded trust. I shaded 9 of them in red. Those were the opportunities we lost because Carson either withheld the intel or mishandled the handoff. Then came the near breach incidents, 4 of them. Not cybersecurity breaches, but strategic ones. Moments when competitor firms nearly gained access to privileged account data through negligence. None of it catastrophic, but all of it dangerously close. And then I wrote in all caps the Oslo memo. I circled it twice. I pulled up the digital timestamp. It had been submitted 6 weeks ago. Had Carson acted on it, we might have retained Orion Trust. Instead, we'd been dropped with no explanation. Olivia sat silent, arms crossed, but not closed off. Her eyes followed every mark I made. I'm not asking for reinstatement, I said. I'm proposing something else entirely. I laid out a structural redesign, a strategic resilience division, direct oversight of high-value accounts by people actually maintaining the relationship's visibility systems that track contribution, not titles, real-time signal monitoring across departments. She didn't interrupt. Not until I opened my final slide. It was an NDA digitally signed, sent directly to me by the CEO of Brithmore Energy. Not to the company, not to Carson, to me. It bypassed the hierarchy entirely. Her brow lifted. I didn't solicit this, I said. They sent it because they no longer trust the structure we've created. She picked up the folder again, flipping through the statements. Then she looked at me, but not like a superior studying a subordinate. More like a general realizing they'd misjudged their intelligence asset. You've just redrawn how we see client control, she said, and possibly how this company operates. The next morning, the boardroom lights were already on when I arrived. The boardroom at Solvantes occupied the top floor, wrapped in windows that made the city skyline feel like part of the decor. I stood at one end of the table, Carson at the other. Olivia sat in the middle, expression unreadable. The board members leafed through the briefing packets in front of them, murmurs dying as the meeting officially began. Carson went first. He opened with polished charm, cracking a light joke about strategists forgetting the human side of business. His slides were visually clean, his tone confident. He described me as instrumental in execution, but framed me as someone lacking the broader leadership temperament. Then, in a subtle twist of the knife, he referenced concerning patterns of behavior operating outside assigned channels, private logs, undocumented client contact. I let him finish. When it was my turn, I didn't apologize for being prepared. I projected my first slide, a breakdown of client sentiment scores, cross-referenced with internal contribution logs. I walked them through case after case emails from clients requesting my insight, projects initiated by me that were later credited elsewhere, and a 3-month cluster of client escalations that occurred only when Carson was left to manage alone. Then came the clincher. I opened my inbox and read aloud an email received that very morning from the CEO of Hallex Pharmaceuticals. To Leora Wexley only. Strategic lead. We will not move forward with any renewal until we have written confirmation that you remain the point of contact. Silence followed. A weight shifted in the room. The board chair, Elias Montgomery, leaned back in his seat. Miss Wexley, your presentation suggests a level of client dependency that raises both concern and opportunity. Carson shifted his jaw tight, his fingers clasped just a little too tightly. I stepped back, folded my hands in front of me, and said nothing more. I didn't need to. When Olivia stood, her gaze swept the table like a gavel before she turned toward the others and began outlining what came next. The vote wasn't drawn out. No debates, no deferrals. One by one, each board member nodded as Olivia presented the motion implement the strategic resilience model effective immediately. They didn't use my name. They didn't need to. Everyone in that room knew whose model it was. I didn't smile. I didn't lean back in satisfaction. I stayed still even as Olivia looked directly at me and said, "You'll lead the new division, Director of Strategic Resilience, reporting to me." Then came the clause no one said aloud, but everyone heard in her tone. And Carson will be reassigned new business development only. No oversight of active accounts. He didn't flinch, but the silence around him did. A quiet severing of the illusion he'd spent years polishing. When Olivia asked if I accepted the offer, I said yes, but not without conditions. I want the right to build my team from the inside, I said. Not based on resumes or title history. I want to choose people whose work has been buried beneath someone else's signature. The ones no one sees, but everyone depends on. Olivia considered me for a moment, then nodded. Build your shadows. As I left the boardroom, Carson remained seated, staring out the window like the city had betrayed him personally. I didn't look back. Later that evening, Olivia sent out a confidential memo to senior leadership. The subject line was blunt structural realignment, strategic services. The next morning, half the company knew something seismic had shifted. But no one understood yet who had gained power and who had just lost it. I did. I already had the names written down, the people I'd watched quietly absorb blame, clean up messes, hand over brilliance, wrapped in silence. It was time to bring them out of the shadows and into the room where decisions were made. I didn't go hunting for resumes. I went hunting for patterns, those quiet, persistent ones that lived in meeting minutes and late-night email timestamps. That's how I found them. Selene Rojas had built a firewall patch in 3 hours that saved our entire infrastructure from a botnet probe, and then watched another department head present it as their own. I offered her full independence and first-line visibility into all client-facing cyber traffic. She didn't blink. She just asked, "When do I start?" Murray Quill had been labeled hard to manage by 2 previous managers, mostly because he refused to attend weekly stand-ups and preferred asynchronous work. But the models he created predicted account churn with 91% accuracy. I gave him his own pace, his own environment, and a direct line to me. He responded with 3 risk indicators no one else had caught. Cassandra Lynn had once translated a compliance manual into Mandarin overnight for an international client without being asked and never even received a thank you. I asked if she wanted to build the new client logic system from scratch. She said yes before I finished the question. We didn't announce ourselves. We operated under a placeholder project name, the Prism Group, low visibility, high impact. We monitored signal shifts, language tone, in client emails, dips in internal response latency, keyword frequency, in competitor filings. We didn't chase problems. We watched for the tremors that preceded them. Meanwhile, Carson tried to regain footing in new business development. But without the team, he used to siphon from his charm, wore thin. Clients asked sharper questions. Prospects challenged his assumptions. No one stayed behind to clean up his promises. 3 weeks and his numbers plummeted. He tried to request support staff through old channels. He was denied. Twice. Inside our little war room, glass-walled but often ignored, we kept building. Every insight we surfaced, every warning we flagged, each solution we preemptively handed off to client teams strengthened our footing. We didn't need applause. We needed only to be trusted. And Olivia began to trust us, especially when the first external crisis arrived. 6 months passed like breath behind glass, silent, revealing everything. Client retention was up 19%, revenue up 12%, employee satisfaction 31% higher than this time last year. Not because of trendy perks or branded water bottles, but because people finally saw the link between their effort and its recognition. The Prism Group grew quietly, folding in more names that had once been footnotes. We didn't expand loudly. We expanded efficiently, threading insight into the cracks of the company's old structure until the whole machine moved cleaner, faster, better. At the annual summit, Olivia stood in front of the company and read the year-end performance report. Her voice carried a calm satisfaction as she concluded, "This isn't just a rebound, it's a recalibration." Then she turned toward me. "We are creating a new executive role," she said. "One responsible not just for strategy, but for verifying that the strategy aligns with reality. That credit matches contribution. That silence no longer hides excellence." She paused just long enough for the words to land. "Chief Strategic Integrity Officer," she continued. "The board has voted unanimously to offer the role and a seat at the table to Leora Wexley." The room erupted in applause. Some enthusiastic, some hesitant, some finally understanding. As I made my way to the stage, Carson caught my eye. He stood, hands clasped behind his back, expression unreadable. When I passed him, he offered a stiff nod and muttered, "You're not a ghost anymore." I turned just slightly and replied, "I never was. You just didn't know how to see me." Then I stepped to the microphone. "I don't stand here today because I shouted louder," I began, "or because I played politics better. I'm here because truth, when documented and protected, becomes undeniable." I looked across the room at faces that had once looked through me. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about truth waiting for the right moment to be heard. And once it is, it doesn't go back to sleep. The applause that followed wasn't for show, it felt earned. Afterward, Olivia approached me in the hallway, a folder in hand. Her eyes told me this was only the beginning.